If you watch enough YouTube, you've probably come across a shop that the creator has painted a dark color. I've continually been impressed by how powerful and professional their shops look, and black being the absence of all light really helps colors stand out. I've also caught myself late at night feeling blinded by the light reflecting off the white semi-gloss walls in my garage. So today, we are going to step into the darkness. I am going to cover painting the entire garage, and then moving on to installing an electrical subpanel and wiring outlets across the garage, including 220-volt power, so be sure to stick around to the end. Any decent painter will tell you that prep work is everything, and they are correct. If you've ever had the experience of scraping paint off of everything you know and love, then I don't need to say anymore. We began with a semi-rigorous cleaning process consisting of blowing out the shop via leaf blower, sweeping, and wiping walls as needed. I say we because for this project, I called in reinforcements, my parents, because after all, they're the reason I have to pay taxes. I highly recommend using Zet Painted Wall Cleaner as it's guaranteed not to strip paint and it does a fantastic job cleaning. I also took the time to last minute spackle any holes or imperfections. Anything valuable was protected with painter's plastic or drop cloths. Speaking of drop cloths, I highly recommend a medium-sized drop cloth to pick up and move around with you as you paint. It will save you from hours and hours of pain, misery, and regret from not having one. Just ask my shop floor. Now it was time to begin painting. If you're looking for any prolific paint tips, I am not your guy. I'm not a professional painter, nor do I have the patience for it. My best recommendation for supplies is to have the paint store recommend naps, rollers, etc. for your walls and paint. If you're gonna paint a ceiling like we did, buy an extension pole, an additional roller, and a giant bottle of Advil for your back. You're gonna need the Advil. For reference, I have an approximately 440 square foot garage. We went through exactly 3 gallons of paint, just like that helpful associate at that blue store told me I would. Shocker. For those hard to reach areas like behind the water heater and the AC air handler, we employed the use of a complex wooden extension pole and strapping, otherwise known as a 1x2 and blue tape, as the extension pole was too thick to fit behind some areas. Alright, now you can call me a professional. If you watched my shop tour, which I know that you did, you'll know that I somehow ran an entire workshop off of a single 20 amp circuit. The less questions that you ask about that, the better. This is not a how-to video, and I am not a professional electrician, so please do not follow or reproduce anything that you may see in this video. For those of you who are visual learners, here is a giant rolling disclaimer. Truthfully, the decision to paint the shop was a result of wanting to do the electrical. Since I knew I'd be running conduit and it would be really hard to paint behind, I knew it had to be done first. No shop electrical upgrade is complete without a good sub-panel. I made the decision early on to surface mount everything instead of tearing into the walls. Surface mounting leaves you with next to no repairs and is significantly faster and cleaner. Now, it's worth noting that several hours of SketchUp work went into this before we even bought materials. I have a full SketchUp model of my shop, which made this even easier. After planning out our runs, I raided my dad's electrical stockpile for wire, conduit, and the essentials. Thankfully, after demoing and rewiring my dad's shop, we had a surplus of materials left to choose from. Thanks, Dad. The first order of business is determining the location for the exterior to interior penetration and the sub-panel location. My home's electrical panel is located on a garage exterior wall, so it was really easy to utilize the unused knockouts on the right side of the panel, drill through them, and into the garage. This was a nerve-wracking process because we really had no idea what the wall cavity looked like behind the panel. I built houses for a couple of years, and normally the entire wall cavity behind the panel is a rat's nest of wires. So we were pleasantly surprised to find that all the wires had been kept to one side of the cavity instead of being strewn about. We then pushed a piece of double-threaded conduit through the wall, added a lock nut to the panel side, and a 90-degree conduit body to the inside, and secured them all to lock them in place. More on this later. Now it was time to mount the sub-panel. Since our stud locations were slightly below average, we opted to install a plywood backer panel which would allow us to secure the panel and not worry about hitting studs. I'll paint it black eventually and you won't even know it's there. It is critical to get the panel level as any conduit that you bring over to it might be really hard to attach since it won't thread on straight. Now that our panel is in place, it was time to start our conduit runs and sequentially attach all of our boxes, making sure to hit as many studs and trusses as possible. After securing and strapping all of our conduit and checking our boxes for level, it was time to move on to pulling wire. When you're running Conduit, you can but shouldn't use Romex. The reason for this is that Romex is multiple wires together in one protective jacket, and it can be insanely hard to pull through bends in Conduit because all of the wires flex together instead of separately. Instead, I used THHN wire or individually jacketed wires, which can be cut by the foot at any hardware store or on a spool. Since we already knew how much conduit we had, it was fairly easy to do a takeoff for the wiring. Math can be hard though, so naturally when it came down to wiring our final circuit, we ran about a foot short on a 42-foot run. I ended up making 2 more trips to the hardware store that day, but at least now there was nothing standing in our way of finishing all of our wire. While my dad worked on wiring the breakers and the sub panel, I worked on outlets and cover plates. We didn't have any power running into the garage yet as a safety measure, so nothing was live. Lastly, we wired the main lugs of the sub panel, which proved practically impossible because the wires were so thick they didn't want to make the 90-degree bend. I won't show this clip because of the amount of expletives and frustration, but just know it was not a good time. Now I'm sure that a lot of you are thinking that something as simple as a paint color doesn't constitute a shop upgrade, but that could not be further from the truth. Color and reflective light has a lot to do with how your eyes see and your brain perceives the objects around you, and this affects your mood and disposition more than you know. This is the exact reason why colors like white are perceived as bright, crisp, and clean, and colors like black are perceived as powerful, elegant, and mysterious. Going to such a deep black was honestly a concern of mine, but after living with it for a few weeks now, every time I walk into my garage, I feel like I'm entering a showroom, and that makes me feel really good and professional. Colors appear a lot more vibrant in person and on camera, and my eyes feel a lot more relaxed after being in the shop for so long. As for the electrical upgrade, I finally feel like I have a well-functioning workshop. The lackluster power situation in my shop has been a roadblock for so long, and it almost feels surreal that I'll never have to whip out an extension cord or reset a circuit breaker after getting a little too ambitious with a tool. So if any of you are considering something similar to these upgrades, I cannot recommend it enough. You and your shop are worth it. If you want a deeper dive into my shop, check out my shop tour video here. And if you want to see how I improve the organization of my shop dramatically, check out this video here.